Levi Bellfiled has challenged my thinking on capital punishments for years and years. I've always been against it. But Bellfield's crimes are so abominable, and he is such a vile and essentially pathetic bullying monster, that the thought of him being allowed to have a marriage in prison is galling. And I fear that there is some legislation that will kind of back up his right to do that.
Article 12 of the Human Rights Act.
Yes, and I think the Marriages Act also applies to prisoners. And perhaps he may get funding to pursue this to the nth degree. I hope he doesn't. I don't want vast sums of public money being spent on some appeal after appeal after appeal through the judicial system. He's a monster. He shouldn't marry. And fortunately, the only light at the end of the tunnel is that he's going to rot and die in jail.
You've seen some, as part of your work, the work that detectives do on our behalf, and we forget to thank them for the work they do, but you deal with the scrapings of humanity. Why was he so particularly vile?
Because of the nature of the crimes. He preyed on young women, and of course Millie Dowler was just a child when he abducted her and murdered her. He preyed on the vulnerable. He went out, he would carry out reconnaissance of areas and women, and so when they were at those moments when he thought he could strike, he could strike. And I'm so delighted that you mentioned the detectives, because if it weren't for the brilliance of Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, now retired, and the team that he led, and the painstaking work that they did, they would never have potentially found Bellfiled, and certainly not been able to convict him of Millie's murder. And also, I have to mention the utterly heroic Kate Sheedy. She was a young woman, again, on her own, that Bellfiled tried to murder, and he left her with horrific injuries. She spent weeks and weeks in hospital, and 4 years later, courageously walked into the witness box at the Old Bailey to give so much of the evidence that led to Bellfiled being convicted.